Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. Yeah, it has begun. Oh, well, there's an intro.
Hello, everyone.
Peter, Nedzo, thanks for joining us. How are you guys?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, same. That's what you get when you bring two autistic people on the pod.
Oh, Jesus.
Leave casual alone.
He's Indian. He's already got enough wrong with him. Don't go at him.
Yeah. So, casual, what are we talking about today?
Okay. So, first of all, welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first preview podcast for
people skip
2025 season, right? No, they don't. We don't put timestamps.
Yeah, but
which
makes it worse. Yeah. No, I'm not doing that. That's more work.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways, it's become a bit of a tradition because we started it last season with Peter, where we did the preview on my channel. The now almost defunct. I hope I revive it someday. We did a review with Nedzo back with us. So this time around, as traditions, as Valtteri Bottas would say, the formerly great Formula One driver. Let's begin. It could be worse. I mean, we've started on a great note. It could be worse. So, by the way, just a brief. How are you, Peter? How many subs, by the way, now on YouTube?
46,000, something like that. It's gone up. I mean, by doing calls to action over the past few months in videos, it's actually reminded people to click subscribe. So that's good. So that's helped a lot with that. But it's somewhere around 45, 46. I think.
Nice.
Impressive. Yeah.
Well done.
Nedzo, how are studies going on, by the way, in your university?
My studies are going just fine. I've got some assignments to do, but they're due in May, so that'll be fine. Yeah.
Cool.
And I have placed a Max Verstappen 33 car on my desk to remind everyone that he'll be using that number again next year.
Yeah. Apparently, Ahmed also thinks so. And he tweeted out something similar a few days back.
Yeah.
I mean, so what I had also got to know was something similar as well. But apparently the car seems good. At least for now.
Yeah.
Let's begin. So it's a preview. So we are going to follow a very basic structure. We're going to talk about all the teams, just go through them. How we expect the season to go. We'll talk about the drivers and a basic layout. And then finally we'll do our predictions.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few spicy ones. So let's get to it. Let's begin with the team that nobody's going to talk about this season, Sauber.
Why do we always have to start here? This is so depressing.
Look, it's like...
It's keep it watching for longer, that's why.
Yeah, it's like going through the veggies before we get to the main.
But surely people are watching this and they're just... Like, our subscribers are literally dying hearing about Sauber at this stage. Like, they must just be thinking
just
to
like
themselves,
Sauber
why are we
right?
talking about this? This is pointless. They're going to be P10. It's a waste of time.
P20,
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, P10,
I mean, we believe in Hulkenberg, right?
It's so much pain.
I think actually that's kind of the whole bit about Sauber, honestly, because I was actually going through an article I wrote in 2022, which was basically, how should we put it? It's the framework that Audi needs to follow to be a success by 2026. Because they had a plan in place, apparently, where it was going to be 25% shares there by every season until 2026. But what has apparently happened is they've done nothing. Ideally, what they should have done is they should have upgraded the facilities in these 3 years. They did no such thing.
But
They sat on there.
This is the annoying thing. Every single team that ever comes up with a 4 or 5 year plan is always going to fail because historically speaking, the only 5-year plan that's ever fucking worked has been Stalin's, and it doesn't come across to Formula One. So, anyway, yeah.
It's like
We have the
football.
Russian media to
Football
tell
teams
us.
do it all the time.
Yeah, it's literally
it's-
kicking the ball down the road in football. Yeah.
I don't even think they had a 5-year plan or anything in place. I think it was just a case of we want to be in Formula One. Okay, so Andrea Seidel is someone who has been successful with us. So they brought him on board. But they forgot about one thing. They had to supply money at a decent amount to actually get things in place. What has happened in WEC? I think the problem is for Audi, the benchmark was wrong. They came in with the expectation that just like in WEC, maybe you need an year or so of investment and hard work and you can start winning. I think they came in with that mindset that it's going to be that easy in Formula One. It never is, and they're going to find out probably in a way they would not have liked in 2026. I think that they're in for a bad time, especially with the way the team is. There's nothing that works in that team right now.
Yeah. So Peter, Nedzo, what do you think of Sauber this year?
Didn't they get rid of Seidel? Like, he was running around Europe trying to find people to work for them or whatever, and then they just got rid of him, and now it's Binotto, isn't it, that's come in? Yeah.
Yep.
And
I get them
Key,
mixed up.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're one of these ones of, we're going to sacrifice this year and wait until next year, and then find out that doesn't work either, so I don't think they're going to do much this time around, because I mean, James Key is a fairly competent technical director normally, but obviously didn't work last year. At least, if nothing else, it's an entirely new driver lineup, so that might inject something. A good mix of old and new, because Hülkenberg's been with them before. I mean, 12 years ago now, so very different beast at the time. And then Bortoletto has kind of been kind of a late bloomer in terms of his own career with the F3 and F2, because before that he was kind of just okay in karting and single seaters. So it's a good combo, but there's nothing to suggest that anything's really going to change regarding their position.
I tend to agree with that. I think the only glimmering bit of hope is their driver lineup. We could be surprised by them if they do pick themselves up off the floor of a Constructors' Championship, but I doubt it. I don't think it's going to happen. So they're just kind of a nothing team. We're gonna look at them back of every single race and we go, oh yeah, they existed, and they're going to finish P19 and P20 or P17 and 18 when the two Alpines eventually blow up. But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically going to be a repeat of the last two seasons, where I always remember that Sauber exists when I do the driver rankings or driver ratings, whatever it is. That's the only time I remember that, and then I'll have to go back and look at the qualifying classification, the race classification, to see where the fuck they are.
Look, on the plus side, there is one upside to this. This is the last year we'll see fucking Stake in F1, which is good. There is that upside.
It's not going anywhere. I can guarantee.
I don't think they're
going to
sponsor Audi, do you?
Well, there are other teams.
Yeah, I just don't know. Stake.
Look, the money. Just look
only,
at the kind of money there is.
The only team that's really that cash strapped and desperate would be Haas.
And they've got Toyota now, kind of.
They've got Toyota.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Look.
Alpine
historically, there's never been
right?
any bad sponsors in F1, so I think it's just time to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to learn more about the history of F1, check out Peter's channel. Can we please move on to the next team?
I'll give them credit. I mean, even though no one else agrees, I think their livery is a tad better than last year. It looks like one of those, what are they called, the like chocolate and lime sweets that you can suck on. Yeah, it looks like one of those. But I mean, everyone said that it looked awful in testing. I was like, it looks fine. It looks a bit more thought out than last year's one, at least.
Yeah,
cool. They put some thought into anything, at least.
I didn't like it. I don't like it, but anyway.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, there's nothing to like about, even in the preseason test. I've never seen a car look that slow since last season's Alpine on the track during a preseason test. I mean, that's how bad it looked, honestly. And even on the, I think it was a sort of a performance run, and you could see the car look slow on a performance run. It's not filled to the brim with fuel, and even then it looks that bad. It's like, anyways. Now let's talk about better teams. McLaren. Let's start with McLaren, by the way. McLaren has been nominated for, I think, Laureus Team of the Year award, something. They've got that one. Peter, what's your take on how do you think the McLaren 2025 season goes?
I think the championship is theirs for the taking, to be honest. If we are to assume that not much is going to change because everyone has more or less hit the development ceiling, then that puts them in the best position, because they had the fastest car for large parts of the season last year, and certainly ended the season as the fastest team quite comfortably. And if we are to assume that Red Bull are not really going to be up there with them, that makes Lando's job a lot easier in many ways, and he can, learn from last year, you would hope. Piastri as well has a lot to reflect upon because of his own inconsistencies, especially in qualifying. But as it is, I think also continuity, because they're one of the few teams where nothing has changed as well. So it's theirs for the taking. Both titles.
I think there are 3 teams, right? 2 or 3 teams where the driver.
Just
2 teams.
McLaren and Strulovic's team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jason.
Well, technically, I would say that Newey being there makes that different.
Yeah.
Whereas they still have what's his face, Mr. Greek guy, Peter Prodromou. Is there still their TD and that McLaren?
Yeah.
But McLaren also now have clearly the man who actually does all the work behind the scenes, while Adrian Newey gets the credit. Rob, good old Rob.
Yeah. Always fighting the battle for the bald people, right?
Yeah, definitely. Good old Rob and his flexi wings.
I have to agree with most of that talk about McLaren being the best. Although I will say, I think there was some rumours that they were refining some of the bits that were a problem with some of the inconsistencies of handling and the low speed, more particularly, that they were fixing with that apparently has been seen in testing. I mean, I don't read much into testing because I will maintain that even if you can look at certain things, you can't actually gauge exactly where the cars are. Like we saw Mercedes a couple of years ago being utter dog shit in testing them, turn up to the first race and fuck off half a minute down the road. It doesn't really mean much. But yeah, I'd put McLaren definitely on top of the pile. It's just whether the drivers find their form again. Because if Norris continues doing what he did at the start of 2024 and in the middle of 2024, then he could lose the title. And Piastri was just even when Norris was down and out and make bottling starts, Piastri was 18th or 15th or wherever he qualified on a given weekend. So I believe that McLaren have the biggest chance to take it here. That's if they have the fastest car, which I almost guarantee they do. But they just need to fix up, essentially. The drivers need to fix up and they need to stop bottling.
Yeah, I think if you split, I need to split it in two, because I think realistically, look, the constructors should be theirs for the taking. Unless they've learned nothing from strategy and operations last year, which is entirely possible, but unless they've learned nothing from that, it should be relatively easy for them to seal the constructors. I think, as Peter touched on as well, the main reason being that every other team competing against them has had a change in the driver lineup, which means that the drivers are going to have to get used to engineers, the car, the engine. Like in Lewis Hamilton's position, for example, Kimi is new. Lawson obviously has to deal with being Verstappen's teammate. So they've got all these problems of kind of coming together for constructors that McLaren should reasonably be able to do, especially if they get off to a strong start. The driver's title is a different story, I think, because as much as it should be Lando's for the taking, realistically, it's just because it's going to be so close this year, I think, that we could have a situation, especially with Red Bull, where even if they haven't got the fastest car, they will happily just put all their eggs in the Max Verstappen basket, whereas McLaren don't really seem to want to do that no matter what the situation is. And Mercedes likewise, and Ferrari could all go into that look, you're new here, so we're backing Leclerc, or we're backing George Russell, or so the other teams around them could very much just go all eggs one basket for the driver's title if they think the constructors is out of reach, whereas I don't think McLaren will do that. So I think that could work against Lando, as well as Lando working against Lando in some respects as well. So the constructors, they should easily have that. But the drivers, I think it really depends how close it is. If they're up the road, I think Lando has more than enough pace to take it. But if it's very close, it's going to be an interesting one, I think.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem for them, the thing is, there are far too many variables that a 24 race season kind of brings into the equation. First of all, when it comes to the tests alone, I think a lot of people are not taking into consideration the fact that the conditions were not representative in any which way. It was too cold, and we remember last season where Ferrari just does not work in cold conditions, and Mercedes becomes the old Mercedes.
You don't need to add cold conditions to that. Just Ferrari does not work is enough.
Yeah.
Didn't it rain as well in
Yeah,
Bahrain
it
for
rained
part
in
of it too?
Bahrain.
Yeah.
Apparently, Bahrain has, I think, as we were told, I think 5 to 10 times during the entire broadcast. 26 days of rain out of 365, and one of them was during this.
Yeah.
Anyways,
There was Abu Dhabi 2018. It sprinkled during the race, but not enough to actually affect the
Make it fun.
drivers as well. Yeah.
Even
yeah.
during the
that's-
test, they couldn't use inters, right? It never got to that point.
Well, nobody brought any inters except Haas.
And Aston
and
Martin,
Aston.
I think.
And Aston, they were the
Yeah.
only, because maybe they saw that they thought, well, you never know, or they looked at the forecast and was like, well, actually, there's a chance here to do this.
Yeah.
Because that's why I tend to, when it comes to preseason testing, I tend to ignore lap times and I look at drivability and reliability because sandbagging, fuel loads, blah blah blah. It's all they're always going to hide what they can.
Yep. So, casual, you think
So-
they're going to win the constructors?
I have my doubts. I think that the problem is, actually I was just watching the 2012 season today, and the 2012 season started with McLaren being the fastest car in Australia, and then the season kind of unraveled in a lot of ways. The thing is, when things are this close, and we tend to forget that after first 8 or 9 races, there's an entirely different kind of regulations. The stricter flexibility or whatever it is, it will be introduced, and that's going to be another variable which could work in favor of some teams and could not. We still don't know the exact extent to which how it will, impact everything.
I think that's going to, if we look at it historically for engineering in F1, that's going to hurt everyone else more than McLaren, I think.
Ideally, yes. But again, there are teams that did not explore flexibility for one simple reason. Flexible wings were not supposed to be allowed, and then out of the blue, FIA just pulled the rabbit out of the hat and said, "Okay, go ahead, do it."
Yeah.
So that kind of screwed things up for a lot of people. There are 3 things that McLaren specifically has to work on. The first is the strategy. It's not as agile, and when it's not as agile, and when the field is this close, you tend to lose out. And Silverstone, one of the biggest examples. Secondly, they have to be more decisive when it comes to the driver dynamics, because it's not how it should be ideally. Finally, I hope Andrea Stella, I've seen the guy be part of some very impressive race winning teams. I hope he takes those lessons, and this time around I think maybe it's time you start backing the driver that is ahead by race 10 or 12, and not take it to a certain point that it starts becoming counterproductive to the championship. Until you see these 3 things, it's very hard to, they almost lost the Constructors' Championship last season to Ferrari, and it takes a lot to lose a championship to Ferrari. McLaren will know. They had to go. So, they know how to build a car, but the other, pieces, they're still not entirely in place, and that kind of makes me, take a step back. Anyways, moving on to the driver dynamics. How do you think it will pan out this time around between the Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri? Just to set the table, the gap between the two in qualifying was around a tenth and a half, or a couple of tenths.
It was 1.9.
It was still 24 in, it was still around 24 in Lando's favor. 24 is just glaring. That's Schumacher Barrichello territory. You don't want to be in that kind of a thing. You have the problem is the gap between the two is not much, and both of them are given almost same machinery. Again, Lando gets priority in terms of upgrades because he's leading. How do you think this season pans out? Because has Oscar's progression, has it just you can say flattened out now, or is there still scope for improvement? Because I think that will kind of decide how the championship could go even.
He improved last year, but not enormously. They're not really in the kind of position where they can say, "Oh, Lando's number one, and you're supporting him," because it's different to Mercedes, where Antonelli's the rookie, so he's just going to do whatever they tell him, and George has been there for ages. And then with Red Bull, Liam probably wouldn't be a fan of that because he sounds like he's just there to win. But then Max is basically unbeatable as a teammate. so he kind of has to do that. Whereas with Lando and Oscar, they're quite evenly matched on skill, and Lando doesn't have that sort of reputation or like charisma to be justify, oh, I'm the team leader, I'm the boss, you do what I say, sort of thing. There is that room for Oscar to get under his skin and try and compete with him, and maybe only if they think, okay, there's definitely a chance the drivers that we can do this. Because last year, I imagine they were probably everyone was getting excited, but it's like realistically they knew it wasn't going to happen because they would eat like 1 point into Max's lead in a sprint race or something like that, and Oscar was already a fair bit behind because again, like the year before, when the car was bad, Oscar was a lot worse in it, and so that meant he was on the back foot already. Whereas now, if it's good, it could be very close with them.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, the way I'd if I was to compare them both to two drivers who've been teammates in the past, I'd compare them to Gerhard Berger and John Alesi, in the way that Berger was a kind of sort of experienced guy who you knew could win a couple of races in the season, but wouldn't really be championship level. He wasn't a Senna, he wasn't a Prost, he wasn't a Mansell. And Alesi, I mean, obviously, in terms of driving style, in terms of off-track persona, you could argue that Alesi and Piastri are opposites, but in terms of the results, less so, because you could argue Piastri is quite mercurial in his results. Like, he'll pull off the odd, especially last year, he'll pull off the odd good performance, but for the most part was just a little bit behind. And I'd argue that's the same with Alesi. Yeah, I mean, I think that if Oscar's career goes in a linear fashion the same way that other drivers do, where they keep improving, he's got another year of maturity, another year of experience, and he could theoretically have a higher performance ceiling than Lando. But that, for me, the improvement from 2023 to 2024 wasn't substantial. It has to be a big step up in 25 for him to be able to say he's improved a lot, and I don't know if he will. I mean, I don't think these guys are real championship caliber drivers. Lando's had, as much as his fans want to say he's never had a championship winning car, he's had 6 seasons of experience now. He should have done more with 2024. And I mean, Oscar, as I said, with like your generational drivers, they show performances right from the off. And Oscar showed that in 2023. I don't think he did in 2024. He basically had his 2 wins handed to him in a way, even if one of them was sort of illegitimate. It's just, yeah, the truth is, I don't know. We could have a situation where
the rest of the field... The truth is that. That should be the tagline.
I didn't know Aldas was on the podcast today.
We could have a situation where the McLaren is like not a Mercedes 2016 kind of thing, but like similar to that level where they can just battle between themselves and not have to worry about team orders or factor in a certain driver in. But at the same time, because we're so far into the regulations, that's very unlikely, and it's going to be 1, 2 tenths, maybe 3 tenths to the nearest car, and you're not going to have that luxury. I think if I had to choose between one of them, I think Lando would win it just to be safe, because he showed, like, all the signs point towards him being better. He was better in 2023, he was better in 2024, and unless Oscar does take a massive step up, I don't think it's going to be his year. But then again, even if Lando does win it, I doubt that it will be kind of one of those seasons where you look at him and go, wow, he's a world champion. It's just going to be, oh, he was in the fastest car, so therefore he was a champion. It's going to be like a Damon Hill or a Phil Hill or something to that effect. Maybe even a Prost in 1993 would be a good example of that.
Unless he goes on to win multiple championships, in which case...
Yeah, but you can win multiple championships while being in the fastest car. Just look at Jack Brabham.
Look at Lewis Hamilton. I think...
we should have a counter in place, right?
We should have a Lewis Hamilton counter. Yeah. That's a good idea, actually. I'll code that up this week. I tend to agree with most of that. I just think that the one fundamental problem Piastri has is it's kind of like, as much as drivers do get quicker and they get better, there's something about that kind of raw pace of a driver that just doesn't seem to kind of, it's either there or it's not. And like, some drivers are just really, really quick. And I think Lando is one of those drivers who's really, really quick. And he has other issues, obviously, that, you know, Piastri is much better at, where, like, I think Piastri just instinctively is a more aggressive racing driver. Although I say that, but there has been times where we've seen glimpses of Lando willing to go wheel to wheel, willing to not give anything up. And, you know, so he has got it in him. It's just not as instinctual as Piastri. But I think where the problem is with that is you can be as aggressive a racing driver as you want, but if you're starting in P4, Lando's starting in P1, and he just goes off up the road, then like Vettel back in, say, 2013, those last 9 races, you don't have a chance to fight with him. He's gone. It's too late. So that aggression is no use. And that's where I think Lando could win if they do have the dominant car, because there were races last season where that difference, especially in a close field, can make all the difference. Because look at Zandvoort and look at Singapore, the 2 dominant races for Lando that everyone just went, yeah, but he's in a rocket ship of a car. It's like, okay, well, Piastri's in P4. Why is that rocket ship not working for him? So, there's that simple thing where if we get a really close season, even if it's 2 tenths, that could put Piastri in P5, and all of a sudden Lando's winning by 20 seconds and Piastri's struggling to get through the field, because obviously when the cars are really close, that also means overtaking is harder because you haven't got that offset between the cars to kind of make lunges and so on. So, yeah, I think that's my concern for Piastri. I think he's a brilliant racing driver, but I do think that people underestimate just how fucking quick Lando is, and I think in a season like this, that qualifying pace could make all the difference. And I don't know if Piastri can up his qualifying pace 2 tenths in an off season.
Yeah, it's
Fair enough.
It's a bit weird, right? Because 2023, the critique that was there for Oscar was that his qualifying pace was in place, but his race pace struggled compared to Lando. In 2024, it kind of flipped, where I'd say his race pace came more easily to him a bit later in the season, but his qualifying pace, the deficit was there. It was just a bit too alarming. Look, the ideal driver would be Lando's pace and Oscar's mindset. I mean, you combine the two and you have a very pretty fucking good driver. We don't have that case right now. Look, if for me, a more potent driver would be if Oscar picks up a couple of tenths, because what he has to do is do something in terms of skill. What Lando has to do is do something in terms of temperament, which can be very hard to come by sometimes because it's inherent, right? I mean, I was actually going through the interview between Damon Hill did an interview just recently where he actually talked about how the foolish thing that he did was he tried to go tit for tat with Michael Schumacher and ultimately ended up getting humiliated. While what he should have ideally done was just take a step back, do his thing, and continue doing that. That's the championship. That's what happens when you go up against a champion, right? I'd back Lando, but I still think if Oscar makes up those couple of tens, I think he'll be the more potent champion. So it's a bit in the middle. That's where
the one couple of caveats on that though I would say is that, like, when it comes to qualifying pace, especially when it's quite close, it could just be a case of like Oscar just wasn't comfortable with the car, and this new car will be more comfortable for him. That we've seen that in the past, where literally one driver is just like two drivers who are exactly the same in race pace but completely off in qualifying. Could just be a case of when the car needs to be on a knife edge, it's just not suitable for their driving style. So maybe that'll change. The thing that makes me think that that's not the case is Lando's words of the car feels exactly the same as it did last year, which tells me that the characteristics haven't changed. So, Oscar's going to have to change something. And the only other thing I'd say is...
I was
just going to say that I agree with the whole Lando temperament thing. The only thing is, there was a over the last few years, and last year specifically, Austria and Mexico, like, Lando isn't afraid at times to get his elbows out. And I do think a lot of the talk last year is like, oh, well, you can't go toe-to-toe with Max. But I do think, as I've mentioned on the last podcast, a lot of that is just down to the fact that Max had such a large advantage that it was always advantage Max. Like, if he crashed out, it was disadvantage Lando in every opportunity. And that's not going to be the case this year, I don't think. So It's going to be interesting to see if his mindset changes when he's like, well, you want to crash, you lose. So let's crash,
Yeah. Cool. Next up, Williams. I mean, by the way,
what is this order, by the way?
This order is just something I wrote up. So
this is an Indian order.
Kind of ping pong going back and forth between ends of the grid.
Yeah. See, That's why we have Peter here. The
It's a
smart
spit roast of F1 lists.
one. Yeah. By the way, I'm actually surprised that the Williams jump came this early. I mean, again, James Vowles and the entire interviews that he does, he had me convinced. But I wasn't sure that he'll do this good a job by 2025 because the car looks brilliant, at least for now. So, Peter, what do you think? Where do you think Williams kind of lies?
I mean, Sainz himself has been working very hard, I think, to try and gain as much pace as he can to make up for no longer being at the front of the grid. And that, I think he said that there's still another 2 or 3 tenths out of the car that he hasn't worked out how to extract yet.
Yeah.
But they're one of the ones where there is obviously room for improvement because, as well as the car just not being designed well, the entire team operation is quite outdated and needs a lot of change. And Sainz is a very good asset because he's fast, he's got very talented, he's also very good technical understanding as well. I'm kind of looking forward to him presumably walking all over Albon. I think that's going to be fun to see, even though that makes Sargent and Latifi look even worse than they already did if it happens. But yeah, I don't know. Albon, like, he's a nice guy, but everyone's like, oh my god, he's like a generational talent. It's like, he hasn't really. Well, the only good teammate he's had is Max, who utterly annihilated him. So that doesn't really bode well. But this, yeah, for Sainz, I can tell that he's gonna. I think James is like, oh, we've got our star driver, we can build the team around him. And it's like, no, Sainz is getting out of there as soon as he can. If something better comes up, he's just trying to make this work while he can, which for them is obviously a net benefit, but for him, he's not going to be loyal to them.
The way I'd describe Albon is maybe a wish version or a watered down version of Lando, a kind of not as fast, not even less mentally stable. Like, oh, Franco races me so hard. Oh, he races me so hard. Oh, he races me so hard. Like just accept that you're going to be overtaken sometimes, and. Yeah, I don't really see. Like, he'll be a good number 2. Like, if Williams do show some good performance, like if they go back to their sort of 2014, 2015 sort of resurgence, then the Sainz might stay because they might be maybe not on the same level of Ferrari and McLaren and Mercedes in terms of staying power, but in terms of like short-term benefits, they could be right up there, especially once they get all their facilities sorted out. They could be a decent option for like an upper midfield team. It's just, what do they do? Because obviously now they haven't got Colapinto waiting in the wings. If Albon eventually does decide to leave, or if they realise he's really a weak link, what do they do then? I mean, I think that they could be maybe mid-pack for this season, either 4th, 5th, 6th. I'll probably maybe 4th is a bit too far, but 5th, 6th, 7th, that sort of range. And Sainz will definitely be the better one because he's basically. He's a pretty solid all-round driver. He's like the Jenson Button of his era, you could say.
Don't you dare discredit Jenson Button.
I've said this so many times, like all the time. Yeah. So
yeah, and you're wrong.
I'm right.
Jenson's a fantastic driver. Let's say maybe instead of like prime Jenson Button, maybe 2004 Jenson Button, for
just
example.
call him Nick Heidfeld.
He's Jenson Button.
Yeah,
I mean, Heidfeld just didn't get any wins, I suppose, and maybe you could argue Sainz doesn't really not deserve the wins, but it was a bit fluky to get that one in Silverstone. I've just remembered. Oh yeah, he got
the Mexico one, didn't he? And isn't there
the
another
Mexico
one?
Was good.
Oh, Australia
Vegas.
was because Max.
Yeah.
Did he win Vegas? Was that?
I'm trying to think.
No.
No, it was Leclerc.
He won 2. There was one in. Where was it? There was one in Australia just after
Singapore.
the appendix, and the other one
Singapore
Mexico.
as well.
Singapore. He won 4.
Yeah.
That's a lot of wins.
They're very capable kind of driver who's I'd put him like on a slight, obviously not in terms of career, not yet, but on a similar level to kind of David Coulthard maybe then. Someone who's not really on that championship level, but is a very respectable, can hop around the top teams like a Gerhard Berger again, can hop around the top teams and just kind of do a decent job and help them out and do stuff like that.
He's a bit of a Gerhard Berger, right? On his day he can be good. Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Is he the one dating Berger's? Is he the one dating Berger's daughter, or is it someone
Ricardo?
Else? That's Ricardo.
Apparently they're engaged now or something.
Okay.
Wow.
He's not engaged to a Formula One seat, though, is he? Ha!
None of the teams put a ring on it.
Yeah, what is he doing now?
yeah.
Because he's got no connection to Red Bull anymore, does he? So
I
he's
don't
just
know.
He
was hanging out with
is in
Andrew
talks
Schultz
with
the other
Cadillac,
day,
and he's got his the clothing line is in place,
He's starting
and
a
the wine.
podcast as well, I think.
and
Oh,
a lot
God.
of other things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Last
Yes,
of the late breakers.
Williams.
Yeah. In terms of car, I'm impressed, although not entirely surprised, because I think of all of those backmarker teams, it's not like they have, we've like literally got front and midfield last year, or front and backmarker. No, sorry, we had front midfield, and Sauber.
Sauber.
Yes. So of the midfield, Williams seem to me like the most competent, if that makes sense. Not that they have the best facilities, not that they have the most funding, but just the most competent in terms of leadership, direction, kind of having a plan. So I'm not surprised they made a jump. I am surprised by the size of the jump. Oh shit, hit my microphone. So I'm not really surprised where the car is because of that competency. And as for the drivers, I think Albon is a perfectly good number 2 in a reasonable car.
Pick it up.
Seamless integration.
Yeah.
Not editing that either. So look, I think they've got 2 genuinely decent drivers. Sainz, I do agree, is going to walk the floor with Albon. I think Sainz will attack Albon worse than Peter's microphone recently attacked all of our ears. So,
If I lose my hearing, I'm sending you a bill.
Yeah. So, I think they're going to be fighting for 5th place. I don't think they're going to gap to the top, just because even if they had a car like and Sainz say that were good enough to fight with the top 4 teams, I think like operationally and upgrades wise and so on, they're not ready for that yet. So I just don't think it's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if you had like the occasional podium with how close it's going to be. Just because track specific, they could have a couple of great tracks. Everyone's talking about how good Alpine is, but the problem Alpine have is Flavio
They're
Briatore,
French.
Jack Doohan, Gasly, and being French. Yes, so all of those things go against them. Of course, that could all change if they put the best driver waiting in the wings, who could be the best driver on the grid in the history of F1, I think. Into
and
the
whose
car.
father was
Have you
doing the
turned it
rounds
into Argentina?
in the F1.
Yeah.
preseason test.
I'm planning a move to Argentina soon, so I'm just getting on the good
Oh wait,
side.
you were talking about Colapinto.
Yeah.
I was
Who do
talking
you
about
think
the
you were talking
driver.
about? Narenka for Kayan?
No, I was talking about the driver whose father was in the paddock during the preseason testing. Nikita Mazepin.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Dimitri was there.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they're buying. It's going to be high tech
Yeah,
Alpine
what-
next year.
Are you on a first name basis with the Russian oligarch? Dimitri
Yeah.
was there.
I wish I was.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Yeah.
will
I'd
be
like
soon.
a high-tech team, Mazepin and Aaron. That'd be a good
Yeah.
lineup.
It'd be fun to, maybe what I'll do is I'll start a new politics show backing the Mazepins, and as soon as Russia gets hold of Kyiv, I'll move into Trump Tower Kyiv. Anyway, which team is next? Or do you need to talk
Yeah.
about it casual? don't
I
know.
do. Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm not entirely sure if they'll be 5th fastest by the end of the season again. It's the entire thing about both Alpine and Williams claiming that they are not too focused on 2025. They're putting all their eggs in the 2026 basket. So the kind of impact it has in the long run, we'll probably see. Haas is a team which is more like, okay, we'll basically get half the car from from Ferrari. The rest of it we'll develop ourselves. So for a team like that, it's a bit more easier to, focus on things a bit more, you can say a bit more reasonably, where the season that they're competing in currently, they can focus on. So I don't know if P5 is that possible. I think the battle could be intense between all of these. I think from P5 till P9 probably. All these teams will have their rounds because the gap is very small. If we see that, I'm not again. Williams might fight for the podium. I think that's correct. There will be a few races where they might. I'm not entirely sure if Carlos dog walks Albon. I think it will be competitive to a certain extent. Carlos should be the better driver overall, but I don't think it will be a case of it being an entirely one-sided thing. Because if that happens, I'm not entirely sure James would have kept Albon if that was going to be the case, and let Colapinto go. So yeah,
I disagree because Albon is it would kind of be very disingenuous to. Albon's been there for what, 3 years, or at the time 3 years now, and for them to bin him off just for a guy who's done 9 races, although very, very well and very come onto the scene and burst onto the scene, to get rid of him and instantly put in Colapinto with less experience, with, you could argue, more, like, although yes, more sponsorship and more marketing, you could argue a bit more temperamental in terms of like just how inconsistent he is. Although Albon was inconsistent, definitely less so. So Albon was definitely the more sensible option. I do say that for the long term, absolutely, Sainz and Colapinto's a better option. But for now, they couldn't. I'd have kept Colapinto on, but in terms of having him as a reserve driver. But obviously, he realizes that there's a solid chance that he can get that Alpine seat.
yeah. Let's see. If ultimately Carlos dog walks Albon, I think Albon is done in that case. By 2026, I think Vowles will try to get Colapinto back. And apparently his contract states that. Apparently it's a 5-year contract with Alpine, but Williams has the right to pick him back whenever they want, which is very interesting that they
So
kind of agree to
basically
that.
on loan to Alpine then, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting actually by the way. Interesting that Flavio agreed with something like that, because that gives a lot of power to Williams. So yeah, interesting on that front. Next up, Ferrari. The most. This one's going to be fun. Neds, what do you think? Where do you think Ferrari what kind of season do you expect the team to have?
Well, see, if we go off the end of 2024, then they've got a good chance to be second quickest, slightly behind McLaren. If they work operationally well and pick up on where McLaren falter potentially with their weaker driver lineup, which is undoubted, and
Wait, which one has a weaker lineup out of the two?
McLaren.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. The only problem they'll have is the same problem that McLaren have, is that they will not want to pick a number one driver. Because if you pick Leclerc, then Hamilton's going to be like, I'm being paid however many million pounds a year to be number 2 driver. And if Hamilton becomes the number 1 driver, then Leclerc's going to be like, I've been here for however long, and I'm being usurped by a guy who's washed and doesn't deserve a seat. Well, that's what he's going to think from his perspective. I think it's going to be a difficult one. I think second fastest is fair to say. Although yes, we've mentioned about how their performance in testing was down to the track conditions, and that other teams were benefited by them and they were not benefited by them. Leclerc and Hamilton is a strong lineup still. Leclerc is definitely the stronger driver, and I think that it's pretty much a done deal that Leclerc is going to be the one who finishes ahead in the Drivers' Championship, unless there's shenanigans, typical Lewis shenanigans, start with developing the car towards his things, which has already happened, and all that sort of stuff. Unless that really starts to take a foothold, I think that Leclerc's pretty much got it in the bag. But whether Ferrari can stop being Ferrari and actually build a stable platform, now that Red Bull are kind of half down and out, now that McLaren have their own internal issues, now that Mercedes don't seem to know how their own car works.
They still don't.
Yeah. They need to kind of work on that and just kind of capitalise and just kind of eke their way in front of the other guys. And that could work with Leclerc, although he's a flawed driver in terms of his error proneness and in terms of his, not necessarily mentality, but that sort of side of things. And although Lewis has a lot of flaws, which hopefully he can, for his sake, improve on. Because if he gets beaten by Leclerc, it will pretty much trash his reputation as just someone who's past it. Because he got beat by George 3 years in a row. So getting beat by Leclerc would be even more of an embarrassment. But yeah, Ferrari is an entire mystery. It's an interesting mystery, but it's a mystery.
Jason?
I think in terms of car, first of all, they're there or thereabouts, I think. And it seems like, the only issue they may have is just the fact that they've changed the mechanical layout. So it's going to be a question of do they have any issues with that? And layering on performance, how difficult is that with some unknowns compared to McLaren, who have basically just carried over the same platform essentially. So I think in terms of car performance, I'm expecting them to be within a tenth or two of McLaren at most when push comes to shove. And therefore I expect Leclerc to be in the title fight this year. Hamilton, I'm still not 100% sure about, especially because the car is like understeery as well, apparently, which I think Leclerc will be able to get on top of no problem, and that kind of suits him to an extent, and not so much Hamilton. And also Hamilton has to get on top of the engine, which I think is one of the key problems he's going to have. I just think the one problem Ferrari have is that Hamilton has a lot to adapt to, more so than maybe any of the other drivers changing in the top teams, without doing all the background testing that the other drivers have done as well, and without being embedded in the team for a long time like all the other drivers have been. So I think all of that going up against peak Leclerc in his own team, that's going to be an issue. So I do think it's going to be Leclerc. Just from a pragmatic, just logical point of view, it should be Leclerc leading. Like if Leclerc can't beat Hamilton this year, that's going to make me question a lot of things about Leclerc as well. No offense to Hamilton, just where Leclerc is in his career, it makes sense for him to be beating him. So by how much is the real question, but that, as I said earlier, I don't think they'll win the constructors because I think it's more likely McLaren, but I do think that Leclerc should be fighting for the championship, and I hope Hamilton does as well, because it would be a fucking brilliant storyline if Hamilton's fighting for it. But I just think it'll be Leclerc, and also I think the higher ups at Ferrari, given the length of drought it's been since a title, I do think they will very quickly get involved and say, look, we have to back that driver if it happens, regardless of who it is, But we'll see. That'll be an interesting one as well. If Leclerc is miles ahead, turning around and telling Hamilton you're number 2 for the rest of the season, that's going to be fun to watch.
For us.
Yeah. For us, not for them.
I'll just say Ferrari are now approaching on their longest streak without a driver's title. It was 21 years between 79 and 2000, and now it's 18
2007
years.
Actually 2008
constructors.
I'd say Felipe Massa.
I specified driver's title because they wouldn't the constructors.
16 years then, 83 to 90.
We talked about Felipe Massa. Anyways, Peter, what's your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is the team that I think everyone is most interested and curious to see how it goes. I mean, ever since the announcement came, a lot of people were like, can we just skip to 25 already? Because I think because 24 at the beginning, there was, because it was same team, same drivers, there's like nothing's really going to change. But I'm far from being an expert when it comes to like individual driving styles, and the people that do that know that stuff have been saying that, him and Leclerc have like opposite driving styles, but then there's been talks about them changing the suspension geometry and doing stuff like that to help Lewis, and a lot of the more clickbaity outlets have been saying that that they've been giving him all these requests, and it's like the requests they've been doing is things like seat fits and pedals just to make him comfortable, not turning the aerodynamics inside out, so it's like it's just a Mercedes basically.
Apparently they've put a bed in Maranello as well.
Or didn't they offer him like Enzo's old room or something like that, and he turned it down?
The thing is, these days there is too much nonsense. Apparently there was a post floating on X that Adrian Newey has been provided a bed in the Silverstone facility. Like, anyways, it's
he lives nearby anyway, so he doesn't need it. Yeah,
he's earning £3,000 an hour. I think he can get a helicopter if he needs to bring him home.
Yeah,
it's not going to be an issue.
The thing is, F1. Look, I'm a part of it. F1 publications, they are so pretty much, you can say
you're the worst.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the kind of stuff we've covered in the last few days, I agree. I am not even shying away from it. It's just that they're starved for news. There's nothing much that happens. the drivers are forced not to say much. They don't show the kind of character that is actually a good thing for the sport, and it hurts F1 a lot, to be honest, in terms of
Yeah.
being for the masses.
Hmm.
But yeah, coming back to F1, sorry, Ferrari.
Yeah, it's just because they can try and make it obviously they'll have to do something to make it work for him, but I don't think they're just going to blindly listen to everything he wants, particularly if it's at odds with what Leclerc wants, because again, Leclerc has been there for a long time, and as we know, the dynamic in Ferrari is that they always have the number one and the number two, and there is the possibility that Lewis can become the number one if he does start beating him, because that's what Leclerc did to Vettel and all of that, and Vettel did it to well, it was a new lineup when he came in, but it's kind of did it to Kimi, because Kimi had been the number one in the past. It's just that for Lewis, yeah, it's a completely new environment, because he was already at Mercedes for 10 years, but then Mercedes engines he's been running his entire Formula One career. I don't know what they were using in GP2, but if it was Mercedes for that, then the last time he had a non-Mercedes engine would have been like his Formula Renault days, which is more than 20 years ago. So there's that in as well. The general philosophy and the culture, and that's something you really have to be embedded in. It's like a family, like Ferrari, the way it runs. And Leclerc understands this because he's been there for a long time already. Also, the history of just British drivers joining Ferrari, it's not brilliant in terms of how it's gone for like Irvine and Mansell and like a couple of the guys in the 60s and that as well. It just doesn't...
Basically, any good driver, you can say the history is not good, to be honest.
Yeah. It's not going to work, especially when you're not there with somebody who isn't very kind of passive and submissive, because Leclerc, especially if the car is fighting for titles, Leclerc's not going to say, oh, well, I'm going to become the number two and do whatever Lewis wants. But Lewis as well, there's been talks about him wanting to introduce, diversity quotas and sort of change the culture of the team, and I'm like, there's going to be some resistance to that, and partly because of what it is, but also just because of you're the new guy as well. So
and it's Italy.
Yeah, that's the thing.
As long as it should be fairly easy to make Ferrari as diverse as Italy, which I believe is 2% diverse. So that shouldn't be too difficult.
But I suppose the way he framed it, I can see a lot of people not liking that. Is basically there are too many Italians in this team, so make it less Italian and we can make it work. Yeah, which obviously there is some truth to that, because when Michael Schumacher ran it, there was basically nobody Italian in the team, in higher management. But that as well, that also speaks to this being a long-term commitment that he'd want, because he wouldn't do that if he was going to like be there for 1 year and quit, unless he wants to leave that as his legacy or something. Which it seems to be with Mercedes, because they've kept the black or partially black livery in this case, even after he's gone.
I have words for that nonsense.
Yeah,
when you get to Mercedes in a bit.
You're such a racist.
Yeah, sure. Racist and apparently sexist and a lot of other things.
Yeah. Well, all of them true as well.
Yeah. So, when I talk about Ferrari, I think there are far too many red flags when it comes to this team, isn't it? First of all, look, when does the Ferrari chairman come for a preseason test? I think that's something you take a look at it, and it just increases the intensity of what is at stake right now. Secondly, if in the last 3 months, the amount of media that Lewis has done, I think for a driver who's trying to embed himself into an entirely new team and get used to it, get used to the car, and be ready for essentially a world championship. Because look, there's a very big chance that this season there will be a Ferrari driver could contend for a world championship. That's the stakes in play here. And then you see him being part of, it's been a media tour of sorts, right? And it makes you think that, okay, is he entirely there? The most, I think the most worrying thing for me was in 3 days, Leclerc has done a couple of race simulations. He's done a few performance runs. Lewis did a performance run. He did not do even a single race simulation. So in terms of the running, he's already at a deficit. Then his first day was not as impressive. Again, by the second day, he was more or less there. At least the onboards looked like he had things under control. It's just that when the season begins, all this nonsense ends. The media coverage, the talks about what he ate or whatever other stuff, it ends. at that very moment. From that point onwards, you have to understand Lewis comes with a lot of baggage. First race, Leclerc is on pole. High chance Australia, Ferrari could be good. They won the race. They dominated last season. Leclerc is on pole position, and Lewis is not in top 5. Questions will be raised. If that continues to happen in the first 5 races, the problem is that the big bosses will come in. The first question will be from the team, and the second question will be from the driver, and that kind of screws things up. Lewis is not going to be a number 2 driver by any. It's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that. It's what since 2007. That's 17-18 years he's been in Formula 1. He's never been a number 2 driver. He's not going to be now, especially not in Ferrari, because that kind of fucks up his entire legacy. That's where my worry comes in, because that will make things disruptive. Ideally, I would have backed Leclerc to even win the championship this season. I just think if Lewis is he's not competitive or performing, we might be heading to a season where Ferrari implodes in some way or the other, because that's just so traditionally Ferrari. That's where I kind of have a bit of a reservation, because look, Lewis is also smart enough to understand that we have no clue what happens in 2026 or 2027, because best case scenario, I don't think he goes beyond 2027. This is the season where Lewis can win the title, his eighth title, and if he's not on board, and he's going to pull every trick from his hat, be it be it being a bit political, be it pushing some messages in the media. He's going to do all those things, and that's not a good thing for a team like Ferrari, where it's basically always on a knife's edge. So yeah, I won't be surprised if we see a bit of an implosion, which tends to happen a lot with Ferrari.
Be entertaining.
Oh yeah, of course. For us.
Yeah.
Not for the fans.
I hear they're bringing Massey back as well for an Abu Dhabi special this year, so that should be good.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that as well. Ideally the battle between Lewis and Leclerc, I think it should favor Lewis. But again, I've said this thing sorry, it should favor Leclerc.
I was gonna say, yeah. I was like,
yeah. Apologies. I have one main concern, and that is from the fact that I think Leclerc is a bit too nice when he's a driver. I think Carlos exploited that a few times. And if Carlos can exploit it, Lewis is a bit more of a bastard, which, by the way, not in a bad sense, which every world champion should be.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bit more of a bastard, and he's going to take that inch and make it a mile. So it will show a bit. Look, if it is competitive between both Lewis and Leclerc, I think the political side will come into the picture. The mind games will come into the picture, and it will show how good Leclerc is finally. So
I'm just personally looking forward to a lot of every single race Lewis saying, "Oh, if I had a qualified higher, I could have won that." And me going, "Well, then fucking qualify higher." Like,
that line pissed you off a lot, right?
That was the turning point where I went, "No, fuck you, Lewis." Because before that, the whole way through the season, I was like, "Look, he's got the race pace. He clearly he's on top of the car. He's just not comfortable completely with it." And then as soon as he said that, I went, fuck him, fuck off, get out of here."
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, with race pace, who knows? But when it comes to qualifying, Leclerc is an even better qualifier than Russell. So I think, he's going to be annihilated in qualifying by Charles.
Which goes for what I said earlier about Lando as well, which is like, if it's that close this year and Lewis is qualifying P6, P7, like down the back of that, then, he's going to end up finishing every race P5, P6. That's not worth $100 million, no matter how good the marketing is to
Apparently,
Ferrari,
he's not getting that amount either. Whatever I've seen in terms of reports and everything.
It's closer to 50 or 60.
They're going to make a fuck ton on people buying Hamilton shirts and all the merchandise, and that is,
Yeah.
Plus, to be honest, Ferrari don't care. Like, after the budget cap came in, they basically, they've saved like
they have spare money they can throw it out on things.
Yeah, same with Mercedes and that. So
true. Okay, next up. It's not Racing Bulls. Yeah.
Do we even have to talk about this? Can we just skip it? Like, what's the?
I think we might. There's one thing we might have to.
Jesus.
There's How good is Isaac Hadjar, by the way? Nedzo.
Isaac Hadjar is a big-nosed French gimp. That's all I can say about him. Like
Love it.
All he does in the junior series is shout at his engineer and say no whenever something goes even slightly wrong for him. Like at Monaco, when Zach O'Sullivan, don't get me wrong, it was a fluky win where he pitted it like with 1 lap to go because of the pit stop rule, and then there was a virtual safety car. And yeah, don't get me wrong, it was a fluke win. But Isaac was like, no, I should be reinstated and I should be put in versus a joke. And it's like, no, it's not. That's how races work. Sometimes you get unlucky. Stop complaining.
It's like
Do you know what's
mini
going to
Massa.
happen? Yeah, you know what's going to happen this year then? We're going to have, between him and Sonoda, both who get incredibly frustrated on the radio, that team is just going to be banned consistently like every 3 races for cursing and shouting. And
They're going to fund the entire FIA prize-giving like ceremony off their own fines.
Yeah. So anything else we need to say about the team?
I mean,
No.
I'm not really that, like, again, I'm not a big fan of Hadjar because he's annoying and moans a lot. I mean, he's also the only driver on the grid that has no karting or single-seater titles. Like, he's never won anything. I mean, maybe he won like some region, his first karting title when he was a kid, but there's no official national or international karting titles. And in single-seaters, he's never won anything. I mean, he blew Formula 3 and Formula 2 quite hard and could have won both of them and then lost. Well, not to the.
I mean, he could have won F2, right? But it was
He won
the
4 feature races and still lost somehow.
I mean,
he scored basically nothing anywhere else.
He stalled at Abu Dhabi, and the commentators didn't realise, and they thought it was his teammate who was fighting for the lead.
Yeah. There was, and then
that's the funniest thing, by the way. For the entire time, it was, and then Hadjar is there.
And then Formula 3, the final round, he crashes in qualifying and has to start at the back as well. That's who won it? That was Martins, I think, 22.
Oh, don't get me started on Victor Martins. I'm glad he's not part of Alpine anymore.
Hadjar. I think he went from it was the title leads to 4th at the final round or something like that.
It was him.
There was Behrman,
Ollie Behrman
and someone else.
One more.
God, I get them all mixed up. There's too many of them.
Behrman, was it? No, I nearly said Crawford.
Was it Mini
No,
No, he's not in F.
Gabriel Mini is.
it wasn't Beganovic.
No.
Marty? No.
Was it
not
Maloney?
Porcher. I don't know who it was, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Basically,
quickly Google
He
it.
threw it really hard. That's probably the least talented driver pair. I think him and Tsunoda. Because I mean, I said that last year. I was defending Tsunoda, and I wanted him on principle to go to Red Bull, but now it's like, whatever. They're not. I mean, it's just they're. I mean, I've been in the past week or so. I've been balls deep in all the drivers' junior careers, and neither of them are that amazing in them. I mean, Leclerc's not Leclerc.
Strange choice of porn.
Because Hadjar's got no titles anywhere. Tsunoda has Japanese F4, a couple of regional Japanese titles, and then a few karting ones. But otherwise doesn't have anything internationally. So that's not brilliant. But it's just like the car's pretty. I mean, they were one of the few people that
Lawson was good in his. I mean, he didn't win. He didn't win the DTM or the Super Formula, but he was brilliant in both those, right?
Yeah, I mean, he could have won both of them quite easily. And his junior career was, for the most part, good. I mean, it got less good the higher up he went. Like, he was amazing in New Zealand and at lower level, and then F2 was like, and F3 was as well. He was never really fighting for championships in either. He was always behind Yuri Vips, and then Yuri Vips got cancelled, so that made things much easier for him. Yeah.
The driver you missed in F3. Was Zane Maloney.
Oh, it was Maloney. Okay.
I told you.
So,
yeah. But no,
fucking great livery though.
Yeah, the car looks amazing. Like that was the one at the livery launch. I was like, okay, that's actually quite good because everyone else was either really bad or it was literally the same thing as the year before.
This F1 version of lipstick on a pig, basically, is what that is right there.
But it's they copied. They've used it. That's the Turkey livery, isn't it, for 21? And they've used it in other things in the past as well. It looks like similar to their very first testing livery.
Yeah, it's just their tribute to Honda, I think. The partnership ends this season.
But also, it means that you can them and Sauber you can spot really easily on the grid because they're brightly coloured, so that will help.
And at the back most of the time.
Tsunoda, my thinking on Tsunoda honestly was I was very much like he deserves a shot And then it was like, Ricciardo is not good enough for Red Bull at the minute, even though at one point I think he was the most pragmatic choice. And by the end of their time together, Ricciardo and Tsunoda kind of had nothing really between them. So it was like, if you're not going to promote Ricciardo, then, I mean, Tsunoda hasn't done enough either. He should be much better. He's been there for three seasons, 4 seasons. You know, so it was like
1, 2, 3, 4 seasons.
4.
It'll be
In
the
the
fifth
big
one
team.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he should have been easily destroying Ricciardo, and he wasn't. So that was that, you know. So yeah,
I think it's it's part of the prediction that I had actually thought of. I think Arvid Lindblad might get a seat mid-season or something. He might.
Ooh.
Did they get rid
I
of the
think
under
mid-season he'd need more
18s
super
rule?
license
Or...
points.
Yeah.
Like-
They did so last season. He already has his super license points. His F2 testing was impressive. He's already faster than Pepe Marti, which is decent. I mean, in the first season already.
Mm.
So let's see.
He has the
If he
whitest
does, I think he
teeth
might.
I've ever seen. Like, I don't know what he's
He's
done
doing
there, but yeah.
he's doing the rounds in India, getting interviewed and stuff, connected
where's
to
he
the
from?
Indian heritage.
He's
His
technically
father is
British,
Swedish,
but yeah,
his mother is Indian, and
born and raised in Britain.
yeah.
So he's like 4
okay.
nationalities at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
He's British then.
That's where he is.
No. This is the way this works. He is Indian until he starts winning, at which point he becomes British. That is how Britain runs
It's like
things.
Coulthard, except with
Yeah.
Scotland.
Yeah. It's Scotland, like Northern Ireland, Wales, whatever. He's a Northern Irish driver, and as soon as he starts winning, he's a British driver. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just-
to
it's the way
paraphrase
it
a
works.
recent discussion on Twitter, is he British or is he English? And that's yeah.
Yeah. So
What's the
that's
difference?
enough about RB,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And let's leave that aside.
Yeah. We can go there, but we need to cut it out. But
Yeah. You have no idea the kind of stuff we've left in the pod in the past.
I'm going to
This
publish
one-
it all
this
in
one
my
we ended
memoir at some point.
Yeah.
A video memoir. Yeah.
Touche. Okay, next up, Red Bull. So
Do we
I think
need
the
to go
test
there?
was I've been a bit. Sorry, what?
I said, do we need to talk about them?
Yeah.
I
Just
think Lawson's
the-
going to be the one who beats him.
Lawson's going to pull a
Apparent-
2014 Ricardo. That's
Yeah,
my big
apparently Jason
prediction.
thinks Lawson is going to do what Ricciardo did in 2014. So, I mean, just because they are both from the same land, apparently, in your view, okay.
They are,
New
yeah.
Zealand, Australia are the same.
Hey, Josh Revel.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's also just it lines up. The Red Bull driver who just comes off 4 titles going up against a new driver coming in.
Oh, yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, the 4 title thing. I had not thought about
it depends
that.
how hard
You
they
know,
throw it with this car, though. I mean, next year that would make more sense because the new regs
Yeah.
coming in. But this year, like
Yeah.
the car looks literally exactly the same as last year's car from the pictures.
So, the car, I've been a bit surprised by the kind of doom and gloom around Red Bull, to be honest, because the car does not look that bad, and it does look that there is a sense of it being a bit similar to how it was last season, where it's very peaky, and while Max can get a hold of it, the other drivers can't. I mean, Lawson can't. Ideally, in my view, after the test, Max, if he's sensible enough and understands the kind of situation or foundation Red Bull is actually coming from 2024, this is a realistic place where Red Bull finds itself. It was around 2 to 3 tenths behind by the end of 2024. It was working from a deficit, and apparently right now they are around a similar deficit again. From here, the team can build on it, and from here, Max can actually fight for decent results in the beginning and then hope to get better as the season progresses. So, is the title on the line? I'd say for now, I'd say yes. The rest, I think the first couple of races will actually give a more clear picture.
You mean drivers or constructors?
Drivers, constructors is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt constructors. I won't be surprised if Lawson is chucked out after half a season. I'll be very honest. The temperamental nature that Marco has once again after a while, I won't be surprised if he just chucks him off and puts another one.
Yeah, if you want, I'll just really quickly talk about Red Bull because I kind of can pick up on that, which is that I wouldn't be surprised either, just because I do think that they are right now very much focused on figuring out what the fuck to do after Max goes, because I think that time is approaching quicker than anyone maybe would have expected a year or so ago. Like 2023, they obviously thought, well, this is a partnership that'll go on forever. Like and all of a sudden within a year, it's like, is Max looking at Aston Martin for 2026? So I would not be surprised if they very quickly go, right, Hadjar's not good enough, get him out, get Lindblad in. Oh, Lindblad's actually doing pretty good in the second team, right? Get Lawson out, chuck Lindblad in. And we get the cycle of like finding the next Verstappen going. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Constructors, I don't think they're going to have a chance, and I don't think they care. So that's why I don't think so. I think the moment they get into the season and Lawson's not, finishing 1 or 2 places behind Max every single weekend, they'll just give up on the constructors and put everything into the drivers' championship. And I do think there's a good chance that it will be Norris fighting Leclerc, fighting hopefully Russell, and fighting Verstappen this year. So, yeah, I think Verstappen's going to be in the fight. The question is, like, can he... The problem is with that deficit and where the other teams are, it really depends on, like, how long do they keep developing for into the season, because they have more to lose, I think, than some of the teams around them. So I think they'll have to be careful there. But yeah, I think Verstappen will be in the fight at least until halfway through the season, if not right until the end. And he could win it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Peter?
much more to say.
Yeah, I mean, I can't envision a way that they have the fastest car, because last year it wasn't, and they've lost Newey, and that's only going to hurt them. Title fight, in my mind, I'm just not picturing it, because they can get away with investing because they're not going to get the constructors. They don't really have the right setup for that. Lawson, even if he doesn't want to, he's going to be forced to be the number 2, and they might just be like, okay, well, let's just invest in Max. Lawson himself, he's going to be better than Checo, because I think basically anyone can be better than what Checo was doing. And he's obviously very determined to kind of seize this opportunity. I don't picture him being kicked mid-season, even if it's really bad, because their options to replace him, it's Tsunoda and Hadjar. So, and Lawson is the obvious successor to Max, when and if Max goes. But in my mind, I'm picturing them being 4th fastest at the moment. And so Max might just be there or thereabouts. It might be something where he's in the fight early, but then eventually it tails off and he's just out of the contention going right near the end of the season. But then if he can win the title, it's like that's a huge... That increases his reputation even further, to be honest, at the same time.
I tend to agree with most of that. I'm in 2 minds, because Verstappen can challenge for a title in a car that isn't the best car. We saw that last year. But it depends on where this car is, because as I said, if it is 3rd quickest, 2 or 3 tenths behind, that is a gap he can make up in a short term. But across a season, I doubt it. Because, like, we saw with Schumacher, for example, in 1997, for example, it took for him to be up against Jacques Villeneuve for him to take him to a title decider, and even then he lost because he was trying because of what happened in Jerez. And
just a tiny mistake.
You could say that.
Just an incident.
The thing is, although guys like the guys like Norris and Piastri and co have very Villeneuve-esque characteristics of not performing in a good car. Like, if it's Leclerc who's fighting for the title, or if it's Hamilton, or if it's Russell, they're not going to be like that. And I believe that I don't think the Red Bull would be anywhere near the top car. I think that there's a chance that they could crumble from the inside, because they don't have Newey. I think support for Horner is pretty low. I think that him and Marco are going at it, because they just always do now that Dietrich Mateschitz has died. And I don't think they have any direction. I think they're going to get to, like, they're going to have a decent-ish start to the season, because Verstappen will push them along, but they'll stagnate, whether it be a third of the way through the season, midway through the season, towards the end. They're going to stagnate, and I think they're going to do, not awfully, but I don't think they're going to be able to do anything with the caliber. Like, we saw this, like, 2013 to 2014, massive drop-off, and they didn't recover until Verstappen came along and dragged the team back up to where it belonged. And they haven't got Newey. Pierre Vacher, he might be good, but he's not Adrian Newey. And that's what I think will force the team to come in. And Verstappen won't wait around. He won't be like, he won't be like, I mean, Vettel left after a season. Like, I just don't think it's going to work. They aren't a team where loyalty is really rewarded. We've seen that with their junior drivers. I don't think Lawson will be dropped, even if he is bad by like a certain. Like, if he just like a 2019 Pierre Gasly, I don't think he's getting dropped. I'll be honest, because as I said, what are the options? You bring up Tsunoda, and then people will just say, "Oh, well, you should have done that in the first place," or you bring up Hadjar, and people say, "Well, just give him a chance." Whatever they do with replacements, they're going to be screwed. And I think, as I said, they've got to focus on Lawson, because I see Lawson and Lindblad being the future of Red Bull. And yeah, it's just going to be, what can Verstappen do? Because if he can do, for example, as I said, like a 1997 Schumacher or a 1994 Schumacher or a 1995 Schumacher.
More of a 2012 Alonso, where the first part of the season, the Ferrari was consistently around 4th or 5th fastest. But the drivers around him, they sucked, to be honest. You had the Maldonados of the world.
Reliability and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, and that tended to help Alonso along the way. And one thing that also Max has in his favor is, okay, look, if the gap is a 10th or a couple of tenths, I'd kind of back Max in that case. But also because they also have this... Look, when it comes to the operational bit, Red Bull it's still a level above almost every other team in Formula 1 right now.
Yeah.
Be it the pit stops or the strategic part. And these are the things that are going to make the difference right now, I feel. Plus, Max is also brilliant at starts. I think these are the... Again, it comes to the very tiny details. I see a world where Max can challenge. Plus, of course, there are races where it's wet. Plus, there will be races where Red Bull would be good. I mean, we tend to forget even... it was the second last... Before Abu Dhabi, there was... Was it Abu Dhabi?
Vegas.
No, it was Qatar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Qatar and Max won in Qatar. That was the Red Bull that won the race. So there will be races where Max would be good. So it's about winning the ones where you can and banking points on the others. Again, it would...
Okay.
Look, it's a 24 race season. A lot of... Maybe the most important thing would be how the entire field kind of fluctuates after the... What is it? The Barcelona change in the technical directive or whatever they are doing.
It will be fucking hilarious though if they've got the 3rd or 4th fastest car and he's not fighting. Like if he's not able to fight, say a Lando for example, because the Jos Verstappen Max Verstappen meltdown will be glorious. And if we have that in the same season as Ferrari trying to make Hamilton number 2, it's going to be a glorious off-track season.
What I want to see is first race.
Up.
Yeah, what I want to see is first
Bring
race
back
Kimi Antonelli
33.
wins the very first race of the season, and he finishes second in the championship, because that way he'll have probably the best ever debut season. He'll also beat Max's record of being the youngest F1 youngest to win a race, and that is going to make him the most hated driver in F1.
If Kimi wins the title this year, it'll be brilliant.
No, just one record. Let Vettel keep that record for now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I was thinking rookie season, but yeah, youngest driver. Yeah.
Vettel was 23 and a half. So he's got literally 5.5 years to win the title.
Vettel was 22, right? The first title.
No, 23 and a half. 23 years and 5 months.
He was born in July 87, wasn't he?
Yeah, 23 years and 4 months, something like that. So
he's 2 years older than me.
So yeah, Antonelli's got literally 5 years to win a title and to beat that.
Hey, I thought Max would beat the title. He didn't.
Vettel's 2 years older than me. He's got 4 championships, and I've got a podcast. I need to get working, man.
I think Max
Maybe he needs to get working.
Max missed that record by about 6
Where's
months.
Where's this podcast?
I think when he 21, he was 24.
Max is 3rd. No, Max is 4th. It's Vettel, Lewis, Alonso, Max.
How old was it?
Max was 24 years and about 2 months when he won it.
The reason I remember this is because after the 2021 Qatar Grand Prix, Alonso specifically asked, after the race, during the team radio, did Max win the title in this race? And the answer was no. Cool, my record is safe. He remembers all these things
because he was 24 and about 5 months,
something like that,
and then he beat Fittipaldi.
Emerson Fittipaldi was quite close. He was 55.
He was 25. Yeah, he held the record for over 30 years. or something.
Yeah.
It's Lewis Hamilton then Alonso. Yeah, 24 years in 1 month. Lewis Hamilton was 23 years in 9 months.
Precisely.
So,
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
Next team.
Haas.
Moving on.
I mean, Haas was interesting. I feel Haas will be again.
Haas.
Who the fuck knows the kind of the
Peter's
preseason test? He just hates Americans.
Peter's like, I'm out.
Yeah,
Haas, no, can't do it. No.
We're not doing this again.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with every European right now hates the Americans. So, yeah.
Hey, I'm
This
European.
is
I don't
American
mind
in
them.
name only, this team, anyway. So
Yeah. True. That's true.
The only thing I'm fighting
just
for
the
is
owner.
that it's called the Gulf of Mexico, right? I won't have any different. As a Mexican resident, called the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. I mean, find more reasons to be annoyed than that.
Yeah.
Anyways, coming back to Formula One, I think the preseason test was decent enough. It's just that the performance run was done with a broken engine cover, so we
broken
don't really
team.
know. The broken team is. I mean, this is probably the best that Haas has been. I mean, just imagine the kind of improvements Haas has made since Gunther Steiner left. Now their pit wall has.
There's less
5
swearing,
people.
though.
Yeah, that's the bad bit.
yeah, but they did. I mean, they did a lot of mileage in testing. They did. I
only
mean,
did
they were
that.
just doing long runs and a bit of wet weather when they had it. So
I had this tweet that Lewis is coming out and doing a performance lap. You have Max coming out and doing a performance lap, and here's Esteban Ocon coming out for a 50-lap stint.
yeah,
That was the story of the entire test. And I think he did the most laps or most kilometers of everyone. They've stuck to a framework that they kind of found out last season. They should be decent. I mean, a lot of people have pegged them at 7th fastest behind Alpine and
Yeah.
which one was it? Williams. We'll need to see. I mean, we'll need to see how it truly works out. But yeah, let's see. In terms of the driver lineup, by the way,
Everyone else.
no one's interested about. Amazing. No one's
It's
interested in Ollie Behrman versus Esteban Ocon. Okay, who wins?
Ollie Behrman.
Ocon.
I think it could be interesting because at the start of the season, Ocon's got it because he's more experienced. But I think towards the end of the year, the one thing that Behrman doesn't have is experience. And what he showed against Leclerc, against Hulkenberg, without that experience, he could, towards the end of the year, start doing better. I'm not saying that would be enough to, for example, say across the season with points and all that sort of stuff. Don't think he'd be better across the season. However, when it comes to the other stuff, I think that Ollie could prove himself. Whether that's going to happen and he's going to get more points. Let's say he does what happened with, what was it, Schumacher, where people were saying he was better than Magnussen towards the end of 22, but the car was shit, so he couldn't show it in the point standings.
Yeah.
But whether that happens, we don't know. But I think Ocon will win, but I don't think it'll be a whitewash. I think it's comfortable to say that he will win, but I don't think it'll be dominant.
Look, I think we all know that, first of all, Haas has a very good record of nurturing rookies. I think that's obvious.
Gunther Steiner, I think, is what we should be focusing on with that, though.
Yeah.
And Ocon has a very, very good record of being, working well with teammates in new envalments.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely nothing can go wrong this season, except
Well,
everything that can go wrong.
I will just say, I'll just get this off my chest. Gunther Steiner was the worst F1 team principal since Manisha Kaltenborn.
Okay.
Oh. No disagreement.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean,
Fucking
he
entertaining,
left the
though.
team and the team has now resources. The pit wall is back to being more than 3 people. The
Yes.
money is there. Everything is back.
There's
He's not
a
there.
spring in there. They feel just reinvigorated and and liberated when you see them and
Because
Komatsu. And
Io
that.
Komatsu actually knows what he's doing.
Yeah, look, I think Haas will be exciting maybe for next year because I think Toyota's going to get more and more involved. And I think the thing is for this year, all I really want to see from Haas is for them not to be a disaster. I think that's it. That's why I'm not really that excited, which is I'm kind of just hoping that they can just hold it together this season because I think they need to just do that so that maybe the Toyota board and a few other people go, you know what, this is worth investing more than we thought into. And that's where Ocon, I think, will be their downfall as he crashes into his teammates 5 races a season.
That'd be great. An American team backed by Japanese people who've had Russian sponsors. This is great American team.
All we need is for Ocon to surrender, and then it will be perfectly like World War II.
Oh,
The closest thing they had to any American...
Well, Vettel could get involved.
I mean, the closest American anything they have in that team is that Fittipaldi, who for some reason is still their reserve driver, 4 years after he last raced for them. And
that must be the easiest cash anyone has ever made.
He was born in Miami. That's all they've got in terms of Americans. Because when they had an actual American, he got dropped for carrying a phone in his car or something when he was in the middle of a race.
Santino Ferrucci.
Santino
Ferrucci.
Yeah,
do you reckon Fittipaldi is
the only team in F1 you can actually expect to hire Santino Ferrucci? It's going to be Haas, right? And it's going to be. Yeah.
I can't decide what's more cunty, him or his haircut. Like,
I mean,
but do you reckon Fittipaldi
him,
is? Do you reckon Fittipaldi is like, when you kind of put something on a credit card and forget about it? Do you reckon Gene Haas is just so rich that he kind of put his bill on like a direct debit and it's just forgotten about it? And like in a year or two, someone will be like, Fittipaldi's around. He's like, am I still fucking paying for that? Like just
because he's doing IMSA. Is he doing it? He's not doing IndyCar. He's doing IMSA, isn't he?
He did IndyCar last season and he crashed a lot.
Yeah,
so.
He almost never goes to races. Like, so he's not even because Behrman was the reserve. Let's be honest. It's a really weird relationship he's had with them because they put him in the car for 2 races because they had literally no choice. But then he was never a contender to be there the following year.
Yeah,
and it's like he's still. You get weird. Sometimes you get stragglers like that in all the teams. I mean, like McLaren have got. Is it Oliver Turvey and Will Stevens are still simulator drivers after 10 years?
Sam Bird might also be there.
Sam Bird's in their Ferrari.
Esteban Gutierrez is still around about in Mercedes.
Marc Genet turns up to all the Ferrari launches.
Pedro de la Rosa. I mean, he's kind of more an ambassador.
He's just an ambassador. He's not racing with them. But yes, some of the people they just keep hovering around for years.
Okay. By the way, talking about Haas, finally, reckon they get a podium this season?
No.
Although Ocon has a good track record of getting podiums that he probably shouldn't. So maybe he will.
Just wait for another Jeddah Grand Prix where he somehow ends up on the top podium again.
Yeah. I mean, he almost got a podium, but Bottas took it from him
right at the end.
Very, very last moment, right?
Yeah.
2021, I think. Yeah. Anyways, next up, Mercedes. So
Ocon's technical place where he should have gone.
Yeah, I think the preseason test was good. I'm slightly skeptic because it was in a very, very cold conditions, and that's where Mercedes tend to excel. A lot of publications are ranking Mercedes as probably the second or a very close first to McLaren, apparently. I'm not entirely sure how, but yeah, there are quite a few that are doing that. What's your outlook of the season? Ned, first of all. For Mercedes.
For Mercedes, I think George will be a good team leader. I don't know where the car will be because we've seen this before. Mercedes,
Even they don't.
we briefly mentioned it before. They don't know what their car's doing. So whether they're second fastest behind McLaren or whether they're fourth fastest behind McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari, we just don't know. I think the main question will be, obviously, Kimi's not going to beat George, even towards the end of the season. I don't think that's a possibility just because of how good George is and how unprepared Kimi is. But for me, it'll be a case of how does Kimi do? Because if at the start of the season he's only a couple of tenths away and slowly builds up to being sort of there or thereabouts with George's level, like Piastri is to Norris, then we can be like, fair enough, this kid's really got it and he can prove himself. If he at the start of the season starts crashing a lot like he did in his free practice sessions, people are going to stop piling onto him and then he'll just get even worse. If he's half a second off but not crashing, like Jack Doohan, then people might criticise him but less so. The truth is, I don't know how Kimi's going to do because we have nothing to go off apart from 1 or 2 free practices, and free practices don't mean shit apart from when you crash.
Which is done, by the way. So there's one.
Yeah,
I've never seen a driver get so much praise for crashing and like totaling a car. It's really weird.
But in fairness, Latifi from Max fans.
Yeah.
Oh, that as well, yeah. But
I won't put all of the blame on him. Obviously, I think he was told to do a one lap push on soft tyres on that one Monza appearance. Although yes, at the end of the day, a driver shouldn't crash a car. But at the same time, telling an 18-year-old kid to push fast in a Formula One car for the first time isn't going to end well.
I bet his insurance premium.
That's not normally how you start the practice session, but with hot laps as well. You build into it.
Yeah, that was.
I assume what Mercedes wanted to do is they wanted
the car before.
I assume what they wanted to do is for it to go well, and he goes top of the leaderboards, and Mercedes then post on their social media, Kimi P1, future champion, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it didn't end like that.
And he was faster than Lewis. So before he crashed.
It's to all that propaganda we hear that, like, oh, he's done this secret test that no one went to, and we don't have the times, but we know he was like 10 seconds a lap faster in the rain than everyone else or something. Like,
yeah.
I believe he can do well. Even in the wet, he has proven, like, for example, in Formula 2, I think there was one race at Silverstone where he just danced away from everyone, even the proper Formula 1 bound guys like Bortoletto, Behrman, people like that. He has got a lot of potential, and I think that whether he can win a race or not,
he's beat Ollie Behrman consistently throughout the junior career, by the way, and dominantly throughout the karting scene, and even in the first season that they had together in F2. So,
I mean, in the results sheets it looked like that, but in the if you look at the actual season itself, I only really did last year comparing Kimi and Ollie because they're the same car or same team. It wasn't as scary. I think Ollie was slightly better in terms of his peak performances. I think
he was better. Yeah.
Kimi's entire season were based off of how Mercedes does. Because if this Mercedes is, like, say, second quickest behind McLaren, I think he can win a race or two. But if it's fourth quickest, it'll just be how many podiums can he get and how close can he be to George. So I think George has a chance of, if the Mercedes is, again, second quickest and it's Lando and Oscar fumbling again, he has a chance at the title. But again, if it's not the case, it'll just be, again, how many podiums can they collect. I'd say that they are, along with Ferrari, one of the more interesting teams just because of ambiguity. That's essentially what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I think my worry with Kimi is that the attitude that we saw as a very, very young kid when they come to Formula One, the steeliness of a Max Verstappen, where you could just see that he didn't give a fuck about anyone, whether who he's racing on track. Whenever he's doing the interviews and everything, he was very level-headed the way he talked. Vettel had that to a certain extent. Lewis came from a very different... Lewis was, I think, 22, 23 years of age, and that was a very different kind of setting.
Yeah.
To an extent, Alonso also had that, but Alonso was very fresh, and Briatore kind of guarded him from the others. I think the problem with Kimi is he's confident, but he does not have that, as I said earlier with Lewis, he's not a bastard in terms of being just chucking the car down the inside. You don't see him doing that a lot. He's at the start of F2 season, you saw a lot of races where his Prema race engineer was continuously pushing him to do things that I do not expect a Verstappen to be pushed to do. That kind of thing is where I see a bit of a difference between Kimi and maybe one of the other former champions that we've had. In terms of talent and speed, he's got them in abundance. I don't really doubt that. But I think it's the intangible things where maybe he might not have those things. Again, he's not tested yet, but the first impressions do kind of indicate that. So yeah.
He is quite reserved in his personality, and he has kind of, I think coddled is the wrong word, but it's that sort of thing where Toto Wolff has essentially kept him very close to his chest in a way, where he's kept him in a bubble and not tried to put unnecessary expectations on him, always been there to kind of support him. That's what he has, and I think it could work because some drivers need that. Some drivers do need to essentially be guided along. Hamilton has been one of those kind of throughout his career. He's needed that help with setup. He's needed that help with the team essentially deciding the strategy and not being quite passive. So has Leclerc. It can happen with good drivers needing that support. But it will just be of like what he does when the chips are down, for example, because he is going to crash at one point. He is going to make mistakes. He is going to be at one point beaten resoundingly by George. It's just how does he respond to that? Does he curl up into a ball and go and and just stumble, or does he come out full force and come back better the next week? That'll be how Kimi does in his first season.
Yeah.
Him and Toto, they have a very strange relationship because he's kind of kept him close, like metaphorically and literally as well. It's weird. He's just he is being very cold and very protective. And I've said again, the response to him crashing, and it's like, oh well, it was a sort of well, at least you tried kind of thing, or it shows his determination. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's really reassuring for the mechanics who have to fix that car up for George to go out in 2 hours or something.
Yeah.
And for George himself. Personality-wise, he's very placid. He's obviously, I don't know how real they are, but we see the messages online. He seems to be just very polite and like well-behaved and all of that. I feel like with Australia, either he's going to crash on the first lap or he's going to win the race. It's going to be one of those two. It's kind of impossible to tell. But I'm not so convinced by a lot of the, as I said, the propaganda, because the titles he has won were all very low tier and against not particularly strong competition either. Because in Freca, his main title rival was Martinius Stenshorn, and then in all the regional, like Middle East and everything, it was like Taylor Barnard and Rafael Camara and names like that and whatnot.
In shittier cars as well.
Yeah, it's like because again, he comes with like his dad's a professional racing driver. They run a karting team together. His dad had a team in Italian F4 as well. So he's very embedded in all of this. But it's curious because again, it's surprising that he's only the third youngest, because even Stroll was younger than him when he started, and obviously Max was, because he looks younger than both of them did when they started. But he has a lot of years ahead of him, and like we said, he has 5 years in him to beat Max's championship record if he wants to. But yeah, Mercedes in general is the one I'm next most interested in to see how that goes after Ferrari, because George is now outright number one, and he's going to have this very placid rookie teammate as well, and so it's going to be a very interesting dynamic also to see if the car sucks or if they've ended up building a rocket ship just after Lewis leaves or whatever.
Exactly.
As well.
Oh, the Lewis fans will hate that if that's the case.
Yeah.
They already are hating that. Okay, just one question, because I think this is going to give you a lot of indication of what I'm saying. If there was a team, if there was a team order in the first season for Max to let his teammate go, would he have ever said yes? Would he have ever complied
against Carlos?
Russia in 2015.
Oh, he didn't actually. Yeah. Okay, there's actually evidence of it.
What race
Do you
was
think?
that?
Singapore.
I don't remember anything out from 2015, so I'll take your word for it. But
yeah, Singapore. I remember because after the race, they said he was pretty much at his defined best. Do you think if Kimi is asked that you should let George through in a race, he's going to comply or not? Whatever you've seen of him.
No, but that's because I don't think he'll ever be in that position.
I think he will.
In case he is.
I think he'll do it without question, probably. But also because George is not going to stand for that, I don't think. But if it's a title-winning car, they will probably end up with those kind of positions. But yeah, I think he would.
Exactly, Jason.
I think in terms of the car itself, it doesn't seem that far off. I have the same kind of worries that I do, just because of as I do with Red Bull, in that I'm not quite sure where they're going to actually be when we actually get to race day, because as you mentioned early on, nobody knows where they're going to be, including Mercedes, generally speaking, the last couple of seasons. But I do think they'll be close enough that they could be fighting for a title this season. As for the drivers itself, I agree with what Nedzo said at the start. Like, George Russell should handily have a good grasp over Kimi, because Kimi, although incredibly quick, I think, from what I've seen, has a lot to learn and a lot to deal with. However, it would be really, really hilarious if Kimi or George win the title this year.
Yeah. If Kimi wins the first race, I mean, I'd love to see the scenes if he wins the first race of the season. Because that's going to be something that actually turns heads in a lot of ways.
The first time winner in over 60 years. And the last
Yeah.
one was an Italian, and the one before that was an Italian as well. But then it was everyone's first race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it was an American because it was Johnny Parsons.
Yeah, but Indy it fucks everything up. Indy, that 10-year stretch when Indy was part of the calendar, like statistics and all of that.
Well, blame the FIA because do you know the reason why they did that?
What?
The reason they did that was to make it a world championship because all of the other races were in Europe.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why they did it.
But then they brought Argentina in 5 years in, and they kept it on, and they could have dropped it after that, but didn't. But yeah, that's what. Yeah, winning your first race is one of the few things Italians seem to be good at in Formula One.
Let's see what he does. Well, when they win, by the way. A lot of them don't these days.
Yeah.
Anyways, next team, Alpine. Everyone's favorite team these days. I mean, the preseason test was nice. I'm still not sure if it is being sold or something. But Dimitri Mazepin making an appearance, it indicates that the team is probably being sold off, or there is something going on in the background. Ollie Oaks being present, who was formerly with High Tech. Yeah, I don't know.
But he's a puppet. Like,
Yeah, he's basically a puppet. Yeah, I mean, he acts like it as well. I mean, you can see what happened in Qatar as well, because while he was being interviewed by F1 TV, apparently behind him, it was already announced that Esteban Ocon was being fired, or he was being dropped a race earlier. And Oliver Ox was questioned, okay, is this happening? And he said, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. And that's actually the case. So apparently Flavio did everything behind his back and got it done, and he's fronting the media with no clue about what has happened.
Sounds about right.
I mean, yeah, sounds about Flavio, right?
Flavio moment.
yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
love Flavio. What a legend.
So what do you expect the season? And does Doohan keep his seat? Most important, I
No.
think that would be the bigger
I hope he
thing
doesn't, but he
this season.
might.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope he.
Can we
does,
just
but
leave
he-
it there?
I hope he does, but he won't. Like,
I think within 5 or 6 races, I think Franco Colapinto is going to be in there. I say this as a huge Franco Colapinto fan, so there's no bias here at all.
I mean, it's like being a Ferrari fan. Everyone's a Franco Colapinto fan.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be a Franco fan.
Unless you're English. Or actually, that kind of screws 3 of us.
3.
Oh,
Who's the
sorry,
third?
My bad.
he's not old.
Sorry,
he's not
my bad.
Ulster.
My bad.
He's from the. He's from the south.
I'm from the-
I deeply apologise.
I'm from
I
the
deeply
Republic,
apologise.
and you'll be careful about this. Why am I putting on a Nordy voice
Yeah,
to
the,
do
the,
this?
the Empire died a
Good
long
job.
time ago. You know. Yeah.
It's alright. It's alright. My granddad was from Dublin. I can say that.
Yeah. Good old racist tagline.
What's wrong with a bit of racism every now and again?
Exactly.
I know, racist. I have Irish friends.
Yeah, I'll just kick off.
My,
I think
my TV is green, orange, and white.
Jesus. Right. I think Colapinto's going to be in there after race 3 or 4. I think it's going to be pretty quick because I think Doohan's going to be a disappointment. And I think Flavio is trying to get the most in terms of price for the team, and I think he's on commission. So putting Franco Colapinto in there is going to make sense for his commission bonus. It'll be either that or Gasly will get replaced by Colapinto. But yeah, I think it's going to be a decent season for them. And I would not be surprised if that is the one team that develops just until the very end of the season. The reason being that basically Flavio is just trying to drive the price up, and the better the results, the quicker that's going to happen for him. So it's going to be an interesting season of just trying to flog an F1 team like a used fucking car. So they're just going to be doing everything they can to do that. So, yeah.
So ideally, I would agree with you, but apparently, what the team has claimed, they are not going to put any more resources into 2025. They're focusing entirely on 2026.
Dude, what do you mean what the team has claimed? Of course they're going to say that.
No, they're not. A lot of teams have not, right?
Yeah, but listen, here's what they're going to do. They're going to say we're putting Flavio's going to go, we've been putting all our resources into 2026. Meanwhile, we've gotten a podium, so we're doing really well. The new team comes in and finds out they haven't even done a fucking CAD design for the 2026 car, and that Flavio was lying all along. Of course they're going to do this.
Let's see. I'm a
I
bit.
hope they win Singapore, by the way, after a safety car. Suspiciously timed.
Who's going to crash?
Oh, doing spins in the middle of a race and Gasly wins it.
Yeah. Another F1, another motorsport goat son ultimately being part of the infamy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Doohan was going to get fired after the first race because it would be poetic. Doing your first race. No, it will be the second race. First race of the season, home race, and then you're done. Then you're fucked off. But
E-Day lasted longer than that. Like,
yeah,
Oh god.
great job.
He'll last 4
You're
more
worse than
races.
Eugene Day.
He'll last
Yeah.
4 more races because his contract
Joe
is
did.
6 races.
Logan Sargent did. I think Doohan is a decent driver. Whatever I've seen in F2 and a bit of F3, I don't think he's bad or as bad as it's being portrayed right now. It would be funny if he does turn up in the first race and ends up beating Gasly in the first couple of races.
Oh, that would be fucking
because
hilarious.
because at that point Flavio will be confused on who is going, because ultimately, look, Colapinto is going to be in a seat. Which seat is something that Flavio has to figure out. And if somehow Doohan comes in and beats Gasly in the first 2 to 3 races, that would be fun. What he does next, because
the whole
that case.
the whole situation just kind of fucks me off. That it's like we've known for basically since before Abu Dhabi, he's going to be gone within a few races next year.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's like his junior career, he has no single-seater titles. He has a couple of Australian karting titles. You look at his results, I'm not overwhelmed or underwhelmed, I'm just whelmed.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing bad in there, but there's nothing like, wow, this guy's the GOAT. But he's done everything by the book because he was he actually very sensibly chose to leave the Red Bull and join the Alpine Academy. He's been, doing a lot of testing, a lot of simulator work. He's putting in the hard graft and being a real asset. And then they're just going to betray him because the Flavs come back at the last minute and just throw him out. Because, I don't think he's going to set everyone alight on track. I mean, we've had plenty of drivers in recent years that have been just completely there, and they've gotten by for a couple of seasons. And that
Joe, Sargent.
Joe and Sargent, basically. That they can last 2 seasons and he can't. And
he beat both of them in Formula 2 and Formula 3, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
That might be, I don't know.
I mean, Formula 3 was a funny one because he got no points in the HWA and then somehow blagged his way into that Trident seat and then nearly won the title in it.
That was he lost to Hauger, right? Dennis
Yeah,
Hauger.
they both had by like 25 points or something. But in the HWA seat, he got no points, whereas his teammates Jake Hughes won 2 races and Fittipaldi almost got a podium or whatever. But it's like, at least give him 1 season, and if he's dog shit, then you can throw him out and bring in Colapinto. I mean, they're going to have lots of options because they've got 3 reserve drivers now, and then
they've signed Paul Aaron. There's already Kushmani there. They've let go of Victor Martins. There's Gabriele Mini, and if Gabriele Mini ends up winning the F2 title this season, they're spoiled for choice. Who the fuck are they going to put in that?
I know,
seat?
because they've got Ryo Hirakawa is a reserve for some strange reason. He keeps being reserve drivers of everyone. There's someone who has absolutely no links or connection to Formula One. Because like with Pato O'Ward, it's like, okay, he's at least vaguely, there's talks he might go to Formula One eventually, but Ryo Hirakawa is like, he's just a WEC driver or whatever it is he does. He's got no connection to Formula One, and he's in his 30s as well. It's just a really odd one. But the Alpine thing is the academy is in a weird place because now I mean, Martin's going has streamlined it a bit. Sophia Flörsch is still there for some reason. Solov has joined Red Bull now. He's one of like 20 drivers that joined the Red Bull junior team this year or whatever.
So basically, Marco is back to his culling days. He's just going to go through them like
any old sod, and then they'll last like a couple of months. I think there was someone who they got dropped after 1 race as a junior, like 20 years ago or whatever. That's how bad it was. So that was interesting.
Oh god.
It's the whole thing is just a mess, and I don't know what Flav.
I don't think anyone has any clue other than Flavio what the hell is going on.
I'm amazed he's still alive. It's like he's from a bygone age and he's come back. Like, I just don't get it.
Him and Bernie, both of them.
I feel like we just put that behind us and we put it to rest and it was done, and now he's come back and I feel like I'm in the V8 era again. It's
and not the good part. Not the good part.
Yeah.
In any which way. Yeah. Anyways, finally, Jason's favorite team, by the way, Aston Martin. So
they used to be Jordan.
Yes, exactly, and Force India, and still haven't bettered the best result that Force India had.
And because Stroll is my favorite driver on the grid.
Yeah. So what are your expectations other than them being dog shit? Apparently, their car has improved. That's what Alonso says before the first race. So.
I thought everything said that the car was really bad in testing, or that it was just draggy and understeery or something, and also
like that
it had understeer and a loose rear at the same time. So I think it
2014
basically
Ferrari?
just pivots on a point, or it's got tank steering or something like that. Is how it works.
Yeah,
It looked like Alonso was driving the 2014 Ferrari, to be honest.
Yeah.
As much as I saw of, because Aston was not on track for a long time either. They didn't really do any performance runs. They didn't do any long runs. They didn't do any meaningful running either. So, and still they say that the car is a step forward. So.
I think that's probably because, as of recording this, it's Adrian Newey's first day, so they're probably getting him in. Is like, okay, can we just scrap that car? Can you build us a rocket ship overnight, and we'll use that instead?
See, I don't think they're
Just
going
do
to
what
do
you can.
anything this season, just because Alonso a long time ago, like in a podcast, literally like 6-7 months ago, said that they're not expecting to do anything this season. I think they will, but just in a very simple thing, which is they've got all their new tools coming online. They're moving their factory and so on. I reckon Newey and Andy Cowell are literally going to tell the staff, okay, I need you to do this and this, and I don't care if it performs as long as it works on track the way it works on the computer. And that's it. That's all I give a shit about. So just go and check correlation for an entire season, and that's that. And we'll focus everything on 2026. I mean, why would they put much into this season?
Do you think there's any chances of a B-spec car?
No.
Maybe that would
Zero.
be epic, but I don't
I
think
get the
so.
feeling with Newey. I mean, I was saying, that he might just build new, and they're probably going to get him to just work on 26.
Yeah.
And Alonso, because the thing is, I thought he had gardening leave, so I was thinking, okay, so it might not be until 27 or 28 that we get a car that's completely Newey, but as it is, it's like, okay, from next year we'll have a Newey car at Aston Martin, so Alonso doesn't have to wait until he's 100 before he finally gets it.
The other thing as well is that, like, they'll say, like, oh, well, he can't do much on, like, 26 because he's coming in so late to the project or whatever. I've heard some people say. I'm like,
It's not that
I'm
late.
sure.
It's like, not
But I'm
really.
sure he's
Two
been
months
designing up, like, the 2026 Red Bull for a long time.
He's got 10
they
or
said, I'm
11
sure.
months before the car gets launched.
Yeah.
There's loads they've probably barely done anything on it so far, and they can just invest in that.
And
all
the
gear.
regulations were ratified in
January.
on 1st of January or something.
He's
right?
probably
So it's
also,
been
they
2
can't really
months.
stop engineers, coincidentally turning up at the same coffee shop or whatever as well to have having a chat. Like there's, it's that sort of thing. So I mean, I'm thinking that they could do really well in 26. They could be the team to beat, and I hope they are, because I didn't think I'd say this, 15 years ago, but I really hope Alonso can get, if not a championship, just a win.
Yeah.
Even if we risk, giving Stroll a win at the same time, but
Yeah.
yeah.
The car
And
would
also,
have to be pretty
I'm on
fucking
the
good,
same
though.
boat, by the way.
Yeah,
when
but
it
also
comes to Alonso.
I feel like it has to pay off when you consider that Lawrence is investing the GDP of a small country into the team as well. That it has to pay off eventually, even with Stroll in the car.
It has to.
I will just say, by the way, I think we mentioned this on the DRS Train podcast a few months ago.
Yeah, don't remind
There
me.
is a
Please
chance-
don't remind me.
The chance that because Alonso's 45 going into 2026, that he will eventually not fall off, but lose that edge of performance that he has.
Look, Scott Dixon
And-
gives me hope. Honestly.
and Stroll, because he's the better driver in a dominant car, wins a title and then instantly retires from Formula One.
It's only gonna be, because Lawrence is playing the same kind of tricks that he was doing in Formula 3 and giving all these extra stuff and bribing drivers to join other teams and vetoing people joining it and all of that. Yeah.
He might, yeah. I don't even want to talk about that. I mean, there are already too many shit things happening in the world. I don't want F1 to be screwed as well with Lance Stroll being a world champion.
Well, it could happen. The one problem they may be having is that Enrico Cardile was supposed to have started like this month. But
Yeah, by the way,
Ferrari still haven't
Ferrari
agreed his
royally
leave.
screwed them over, is it? I read that and I could not stop laughing.
I would not
Because
be surprised if it was a situation where he was like, right, guys, I'm off. And they were like, wait, what? You haven't signed this yet. That would be such a Ferrari thing to do. Just like, oh, we forgot to sign the paperwork.
I don't think they've forgot to sign the paper. I think it's very, very intentional the way they've gone about it. And it's Fred Vasseur being a smart ass, to be honest. And credit to him, honestly. Cool. By the way, we're done with the teams and everything. Now the predictions bit. First up,
Is that a drum roll?
Yeah. An attempted one. Jason will add the.
Well,
what
also,
you-
no,
sound
I'm not
effect.
going to. I'm not going. And
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to crop out that noise of you doing that and just drop it into various episodes when you say stupid things going forward.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
By the way, just a quick one as well. I do have a hard out in like 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's do quick fire.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I also might sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, how many podium finishers? Ned? How many
Podium
different podium finishers this season?
I'm gonna go bold and say 8 or 9.
That's last season's prediction. 9. 10. We
Yeah.
had 10 last season. You're not going bold. You're going. But what's the other
Yeah.
of bold?
Conservative? I don't know.
Conservative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm running out of word. It's it's 2 a.m. on my side. So yeah.
I'm trying to think, yeah.
I'll make it simple. So first 4 teams, expecting each of the driver to finish on the podium. That's 8. Then you have last time around we had both Alpines on the podium. I won't be surprised if they're there. 11, 12. I'm picking 12.
I think 10 or 11. I mean, all of the top 4, Alpine somehow always do it. I mean, Sainz can probably pull a penalty out of his arse as well. Podium out of his arse.
Podium. Yeah.
As well.
It's 8 in yours on your end as well. So
Yeah.
probably it's late for you too.
I need to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 6 just to be out of left field.
Yeah, you want a shitty season, don't you? 6.
Yeah.
So
2, just McLaren. Actually, that's not even physically possible, is it? 3, then.
We new call the teams. Only McLaren runs.
Mm.
Yeah. How many different winners? We had 7 multiple race winners last time around. Just
6.
to put the context on it.
At least 6. I think everyone from the top 4 teams except Antonelli
Lawson?
and Lawson, you could realistically expect to win at least one race.
I'm saying 6 podium winners, and those are also the 6 drivers who get wins.
Ned?
I'll say 7.
Yeah. I'm also going with 7.
You're such Hamilton haters.
It was Lawson that I actually excluded. So.
I know, yeah, I was taking the piss. Yeah.
Okay, one bold prediction for the season. Peter?
I guess I said it before, but yeah, Antonelli wins the first race.
Okay. Jason?
Lawson beats Verstappen over the course of the season.
Jesus
Because
Christ.
it's never
that's
going to
demented.
happen.
That's not
it's
bold,
never
that's
going.
demented.
It's never going to happen. But if it does, this will be a fucking incredible clip.
It'll be if Max rage quits halfway through, and so then Lawson overtakes his points haul because of that.
I mean, he could be arrested after Jos Verstappen burns down the entire pit lane when he loses and goes nuts. Yeah.
I'd say this is kind of stealing Peter's idea, but I'm going to say Kimi Antonelli will win a race this season. Not the first race, but a race.
You
So
do
you're
know the
taking a less
definition of bold, right? I mean,
It's gonna be even worse than Piastri. It's gonna be the most coddled setup win ever when he does. Everything's gonna have to be done to perfection in terms of strategy and how the race goes, rather than him just charging his way through the field out of nowhere.
Yeah.
okay. I think Arvid Lindblad replaces Isaac Hadjar mid-season.
Yeah.
I think that happens. I think that's highly likely, depending on MP Motorsport. I think he's part of Campos, and Campos was pretty good last season. So the car would be good. He's had decent run. I think he might end up winning. Okay, the best midfield team. Jason?
Williams. I'm
Ned?
going. I'm all in.
Williams.
Yeah, Williams. Why not? I would say Alpine, but Doohan's there, and I would say Aston Martin, but Stroll's there. So
And you would say Haas, but Ocon's there.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I would
think
say
it'll be
Sauber,
Haas
but I'm
because they'll
I'm
actually
not
develop the car through the season. I don't think any other team does. Ideally, I think that's going to be the difference. Plus, Ollie Behrman is going to. I think he'll be decent enough. So you'll have two drivers that are going to bring strong enough results.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that the next one is kind of covered. How many races will Kimi Antonelli win?
7.
Range. Okay, let's go with range. Jason?
6.
What- Did anyone win 6 races last year?
I don't. I'm just saying 6.
Max
for
did.
everything
Probably
this
did.
season.
Oh,
season.
he won like he won at the yeah. Okay. 1 to 3, I'll say.
Ned?
12. No, 1.
Imagine if he wins 12. That's a Mark
Right.
Marquez
He's
season, by the way.
consecutively as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beats Verstappen's record.
Beats all of Verstappen's records in one
Yeah.
season.
He becomes the most hated driver in F1 in just
yeah.
12 races.
Yeah.
Look, if that happens, I'm all for it. I'm game.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're all for the chaos.
I just saw your predictions list, by the way. Read the next one out verbatim because I think you've written it wrong.
No, I haven't. Yeah, wait. Again, amazing. We are 2 hours into the podcast, and now you've read the list of the predictions. It's not even before the recording.
That's the first time I've read that in months.
Great job. Yeah, great
I
job.
don't know why you send it to me anymore, to be honest. Like, this is
Yeah.
what we're doing on the podcast. I never read it.
Yeah. Anyways, bad habit on my part.
Yay.
I think he'll win a couple. Kimi Antonelli probably win a couple of races. If he wins more than 2, I think he'll probably. I think that's bad news for George, because then George should probably look for a new home. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, Lewis Hamilton versus George Russell. Who finishes ahead in the championship?
Get you know.
George.
George.
Less internal competition.
Yeah.
And a
What,
better
Ned?
driver.
Yeah, I think George would. I also think so. But again, it depends on if Mercedes does not screw up again with the car, or if the car is just great in snow and then just sucks in every other conditions. Yeah.
Did you say
that's it.
snow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vegas, right? It was
okay.
basically snowing, right? Okay. Finally, constructors champion. Peter.
McLaren.
Yeah. Okay. Jason.
Williams. Nah, McLaren.
Ned.
HRT. No, McLaren.
HRT. Yeah. Yeah. I
Hormone
think so.
replacement there. Anyway. Sorry.
I mean, he's too young to even think about those things, right? Yeah. It's for us old people.
Speak for yourself. I'm a glory physical specimen. Just slightly bald and fat.
You're bold, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. You are. Jesus, even my eyes is closing now. Yeah, I think McLaren. Okay. Finally, drivers' championship. Who wins? Peter.
I want Charles to win it, but it's probably going to be Lando.
Ned.
I don't want Lando to win it, but it's probably going to happen. I'll say Lando.
Okay.
Head says Lando, heart says Charles Leclerc, balls want it to be Kimi Antonelli, so I'm going to say Charles Leclerc.
Max Verstappen. I think Max wins.
Fuck it, probably.
I mean, I would love that, because it would be like, okay, this is. I think that because the car is not going to be fastest, so I think then he does actually get GOAT status if he does it.
He'll be very close to that. Yeah.
By the way, I just realised, because of where the background is, Lando's a little man being given the finger by Max Verstappen, and I didn't even do that on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we're done. We're done with the preview and predictions. Surprise! By the way, guys, thanks for sticking around watching the whole thing. And thanks, Peter and Ned, for coming on. Jason, take it over.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the 2 people who get to this point in the podcast, and make sure you subscribe. There'll be 6 people. 6 people watching this podcast at this point. You watch.
Maybe
Four of them will be us.
I won't be watching this, Peter. I don't know about you.
I'll get halfway through and just be like, I can't be fucked with this anymore. What are we talking about?
Thanks, everybody. Cheers for watching. Bye.
Goodbye.
Right.
Oh, don't forget to subscribe to Peter and Nedzo as well. I'll put your links in the description below. Oh,
Yeah.
and don't fucking
don't, I'll
subscribe.
stab
We
you
don't
in the
want you.
eyes.
Yeah, well, unsubscribe to this channel, please. We don't want you around. Bye.
Yeah.